Well, welcome back. Kevin Brockway and the great Mike DeCourcy with us. Been talking about all kinds of things, mostly tournament related. The Big Ten tournament coming up, obviously starting, what is tomorrow? Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday's the first day. The first two games. And then Indiana, the remaining guys the next day, and then except for the teams that have the double bye. Indiana taking on Michigan, obviously. And Indiana's got a tough road to hoe, man, to make the tournament. Looking at your bracket, they're on the bubble, which I assume that means the first four out.
Yes, that's what I have. Before the weekend, remember, this my most recent bracket, and I'm not updating today. They asked me to start tomorrow, so I won't update today. So I don't 100% know where they would fall today. I know they still wouldn't be in. I suspect they would still be my first team out. But obviously, the fact that they are playing one of my last teams in now, or at least one of my last teams in as of Friday, the Michigan win at Ohio State maybe pushed them out of a first four game. I'm not sure. It may not have, because, again, some of that is dependent on what others do. Like Memphis was on the 11 line and won, so they're not falling. North Carolina was on the 10 line, and you may be aware that they won over the weekend. Michigan will still be a first four team. So I would say that Michigan playing Indiana, really, if Indiana loses that game, it's okay, it's over. And if they win it, then they still have a legit shot because their resume isn't bad.
Their net rankings and their Ken Palms are in the 40s, and that's really giving them a boost, I guess.
Yeah, right? I think one thing to remember is that although that helps, it doesn't hurt in selections, that those rankings, you don't know 100% what anybody in the committee room thinks or how they think, unless they choose to share it. And for the most part, committee members tend to not do that. They tend to sort of like, he's the chair, she's the chair, they speak for us. And so they don't tell you what they're thinking. They are going out and watching games. They are aware of the metrics. But just as you have voters now in the AP poll, that they don't just look at their records and what they've seen or whatever, and they factor in all these different metrics and average them out because they're trying to look smart or whatever, And I'm thinking I don't know if I've said this before to you guys, but if you're going to use the metrics, then why don't just say, oh, here's the metric? What's the point of taking your time to do the numbers and average out all these different ones and then say, oh, this is my top 25? It just seems ridiculous to me. Ken Palm tells you what it is, right?
I'm one of those geeks that does that. I vote on the AP poll. I take into account the fact, but
why would you average in the metrics if you already have metrics? I don't understand that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I look at Ken Palm and so forth, and I look at Ned and everything like that, but I'm not saying that you consult them. I mean, you should consult them. Yeah, I'm talking about literally doing a formula. Yeah, no, I don't do that. No.
I didn't think you would. That's why
Mike, I have a question for you.
Do you know someone that does do it that way?
No.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Why? They're already, and this is the point you're making. There's already a formula, so why in the hell is a sports writer creating a mathematical formula that
full of other formulas? Yes, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's preposterous. But I'm not saying
that person shouldn't have a damn vote. That drives me insane.
And
I'm sure it's somebody that's probably well known.
And it's I think it shows I think the AP is probably happy because it shows a level of zeal rather than vote. So I think that from that standpoint, they're probably happy with that. But I think that you could have people on the committee that do that. You don't know, or you could have them that what the standard, I might have said this before. When you go into the mock selection process that they used to do, you get to meet some of the committee members. And there was one or two over the there were one or two every year that you'd meet that would say three things that they would go by. Who'd you play? Where'd you play? How'd you do? That's the standard. And that's how it should be. Judge what a team has accomplished, not necessarily what their own net ranking or their own Sagarin or Ken Palm or whatever. Can you look at that to maybe break a tie or something like that? Sure. But I don't think that, there's no formula that's perfect.
No,
if
because
there were
especially if you're comparing teams that play in the Big Ten versus teams that play in the AC versus the WCC or something, they're completely different metrics. I mean, you have one or two good teams versus 9.
Yeah, I think that it makes a difference, certainly, and that's what those things try to average out for. And I have great respect for, especially the stats that Ken Pomeroy does on offensive, defensive efficiency, the way teams play, tempo, percentage of 3-pointers that constitutes an offense, all that stuff. I think it's $20 a year for Ken's site if you want the whole access. It is the best $20 I spend all year. I guarantee it. Here's the story. Sunday night, I was at BTN, and there was no way for me to get out to get dinner because we had wall-to-wall games and wall-to-wall shows. So I wanted to order from the Chipotle app, and I forgot to change the setting from my hotel to the studio. So I sent $20 worth of Chipotle to the hotel where I was not. So I blew $20 on food that I didn't eat, and I also spent $20 on the best college basketball stat site in America. So that's how great it is. That you get all that Ken gives you for the same price of what I blew because I pushed the wrong button. So, but at the same time, I don't think that one should look at that as the be all and end all of, well, they're the 25th team, so they must be the 25th best team. Look, Providence is not at 24-4, the 35th best or whatever they are today college basketball team. That's ludicrous. Now they may be the 35th most likely to win a particular game based on point spread, et cetera, but they're not the 35th best team. That's not a way of looking things. There's no defensible way of saying that.
Looking at Joe Lunardi's bracket. Ironically, he's last 4 buys. He's got Michigan as the last. His last 4 in, Rutgers is the second to last, and the first 4 out is Indiana. So that looks like Memphis or Michigan could take a loss in the tournament. You don't know. With that one loss,
I'm not going to commit to that for this reason. One, it moves Indiana closer to Michigan. 2, it gives Indiana the opportunity to go out and then win more bigger games.
And they only played twice this year. So, and if they were to beat them on a neutral floor, I don't know because Michigan,
it wouldn't hurt.
Indiana
I mean, they're close enough that it could be a tiebreaker. And then, like I said, then Indiana gets to go out and play Illinois. And Penn State played Illinois close last week. Iowa played Illinois close last week. Indiana could. I mean, we know they can. So
I know they can play them close because they played Purdue close. And I'll be honest with you, that was a shocker to me. I absolutely expected Indiana to get annihilated at Mackey, but just because it was going to be Mackey and Purdue was going to be pissed, the fans, all that stuff, and that didn't happen. Indiana was able to again give Purdue all they wanted, and that was in an environment that. Indiana has not played well in harsh environments, and man, they gave them a game. I guess I should say.
Hey, they had a last shot to win it, right? I mean, or tie if they had the opportunity, execution wise. I know if I'm Michigan, I'm playing as if that game means in or out. And honestly, if they win it, it's in. They're definitely in. And if they lose, and if IU loses, they're definitely out. So. If I'm Michigan, I'm playing that game like I absolutely have to have it.
In the second half, in Purdue was, and Indiana was in that game with about 5 minutes to go. So that tells you something. Mike, I'm curious about conference record. 9-11. Does that hurt, or is that a perception thing with regards to that? You see very few teams with losing conference records that make it as that large team.
Yeah, you see few, but that's only because the window for those teams is pretty small. I mean, the team that is putting up that kind of record is shooting for one of the first 4 spots or shooting for one of the 11s. So the window isn't big. And so, of course, there aren't going to be a lot mathematically, but it doesn't keep you out. It's not a factor in the selection room. It's barely on the team sheet. And actually, it's not on the team sheet. You have to do the calculation because it gives your non-conference record, oddly enough, on the team sheet, but it doesn't give your conference record. So you have to do the subtraction. And so if you really want to, you can do that. Or you can whip out your phone, because it's not like they confiscate everybody's phone. You can whip out your phone and say, oh, what was Indiana in the Big Ten? If you want to make it a factor, you're free to make it. Again, you can make the decision as a committee person on whether you like a team's nickname or color of uniform. You can do that. No one can stop you because every ballot is secret. The discussions are not, but every ballot is. So you can vote whatever you want to vote. And again, you can do that vote on whatever basis you want. But if you look at Iowa State, for instance, Iowa State is 7-11 in the Big 12 conference, but they had an overwhelming non-conference. I mean, their non-conference record, if you just did the Ken Palm on that or the net on that, it'd be one of the highest in the country. Or just, separated out non-conference quad ones and that sort of thing. They had a really strong. So 7-11 isn't going to affect them getting in, and it won't even affect them getting a decent seed. I had Iowa State last bracket as an 8. So I don't know where they'll go from there in Kansas City. Obviously depends on how they perform, but they have the ability because of that to get up to a 7. And we're talking about a team that was 4 games under 500 in their league.
A couple things. One quick note here. Someone just sent me regarding Providence. 6 out of the 8 players listed on their roster on the box score in their last game versus Villanova were between 22 and 24 years old.
Yeah, I'm sure that helps. One of the interesting things about them as well is that on that team, they have 2 top 100 players in their 8-man rotation. 2 in the entire thing. They won 24 games with 2 top 100 players, and the second of those, Nate Watson, was for 24/7 Sports, literally the number 100 player. So they were that close to having 1 top 100 player in their rotation. They have 4 players. Half their rotation was unranked by 24/7 Sports. And to complete that thought, 24/7 Sports ranks 400 players a year. 400. And half their rotation couldn't make that cut, and still they're 24-4. I think that's amazing. Yes, they're old, but that's not uncommon at all. With the COVID year, a lot of kids took the COVID year. I mean, my goodness, Jalen Coleman-Lands at Kansas. He's he's right behind me in line to get Social Security, for goodness sakes.
No, the dude Bohannon at Iowa.
Yes, absolutely.
He went through his
another.
I think he went through his 4th senior day festivities. I mean, he's got that's amazing. Kevin, you were talking about looking at the Big Ten record, but I think that those people also consider the fact that the Big Ten is sending potentially 9 teams to the NCAA. So when you're playing in the Big Ten Conference, you're playing NCAA tournament teams almost every game. So that's why I don't think a 9-11 record is going to hurt anyone at all, because you look at who they're near and close by, and it's the Michigans, it's the other teams, especially when, and it's, God, this is what's so frustrating for Indiana fans. You said earlier that I at the start of the season, I said I thought that Indiana could be a top 4 team, and they damn sure could have. There are 4. You can just take 4 out of their 11 losses and turn that around, and that jacks them up. They just could not get those close wins. They gave up wins that they shouldn't have. The Northwestern win, the Penn State win. I'll be honest with you, both the Wisconsin losses, but that's what it could have, should have. But you could easily pick out four games.
Wins there too, Jim. They got some close wins. I mean, they got Purdue.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying they could have easily been up
at the beginning of the year. You know what I mean? That's, you are what you are. You are what your record says you are.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Kevin. But I think Jim's point is that if you did a better job, you could have been Wisconsin or Providence.
Yeah,
whether it's the players, the coaches, whoever. If you'd done better, you could have been one of those teams.
But you didn't do
it. And they were this close to it. And that's what's so difficult. If you were this far away, well, you get it. But when you're that stinking close, you're like, gosh, dang it, guys. If you just don't screw up that last 1 minute in the game that they did probably 5 times, that's what's maddening, because you're like, you can read, you can touch it. But next year's team is probably going to be a completely different look, Mike. I would be shocked if there were not 6 new faces on this roster. Minimum.
Yeah, the other thing, and Kevin, you know this as well as anybody, the other thing, and this is not within one's control necessarily, but you lose Rob Finney for the heart of conference play. And we saw Rob's importance again. I think, Jim, if they'd gone up in the same state as they played the second 2 weeks in February, say, and gone into that Mackey game, they probably would have gotten blown out. But even though Rob didn't have a great start from the field in the Purdue game, I think he still made a difference in the second half in them being competitive. And Trey Galloway's absence in the last couple of weeks has had an impact as well. And, injuries are part of the game. Yeah, but the teams that get injured are the ones that wind up on the wrong side of whatever. That's the reality. Injuries are part of the game, sure. But Gonzaga doesn't have those. They don't. Arizona doesn't have them. That's the difference. Kentucky has them, or they would maybe be in that company on the one line. They had multiple injuries every time they played a big game on the road. So it is part of the game, but it's a part of the game that punishes particular teams, and others that don't have those injuries, it doesn't.